Hi friends, it's Unicorn and it's time to plan my readings for March. As when I'm filming this, there's a lot of things going on in the world. I feel kind of depressed to be honest, and also powerless. I don't know how to digest the whole thing yet. I just feel like every day we wake up to a worse day compared to the day before. So I think I'll just be honest with you guys about my feelings, and also I am fortunate enough that we still have books to look forward to. I have so many books I wanted to read in March, and on top of that, I also need to finish 4 books for the BookTube prize. I started late for the BookTube prize because I was originally on standby, but later on in February, I got emails that someone dropped off, so I got assigned for 6 books. And I'm reading for nonfiction this year, so all the 6 books are nonfictions. And according to my schedule, I finished 2 books in February, and also I need to read 4 more in March. And I also need to read like 50 pages each per day. So that will take a chunk of my reading time, so we'll see other books. And also at the end of March, I'll be moving to a new apartment, so I'm assuming March will be interesting and also chaotic. I'll talk more about the move and maybe film a video about my current bookshelf before I leave, but now let's dive into the books that I can talk about. As usual, the first part of my TBR is the books that I'm gonna read for the From and About Asia reading project. All the details and links will be down below if you're interested. The project is currently on a break, so I decided to use this time to catch up on the reading about Mongolia that we're supposed to do last November. And I have to say, it's so hard to find books translated from Mongolian or books by Mongolian authors, consider how important a role it played in the world history. However, I did manage to find a few books by Mongolian authors, and I'll be reading The Blue Sky by Galsan Tschinag and translated by Katharina Rout. This is a novel set in Altai Mountains in the northern Mongolia. It's talking about the life of Tuvan people, which is a nomadic ethnicity group in Mongolia, and some also live in Russia and China. It's a story about how the ancient lifestyle is colliding with the influence of modernity. Our protagonist, who is a young shepherd boy, felt like his dog is the only thing that the world left for him. So after his dog dies, he started to questioning the world. The author is actually the first and the only Tuvan people who's telling stories using written languages, and the story gives me a vibe of the last quarter of the moon, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. Then I have 2 books about Mongolia, but unfortunately not by Mongolian authors. The first one is in Chinese. It's called 蒙古国纪行, Travel Notes of Mongolia. This book was written in Chinese and does not have an English translation, but it has a very romantic English title called I Even Hope the Journey is Endless. I have no idea why that came up, but it's the English title of that book, which literally translates to Travel Notes of Mongolia. This is more of a photography book than a nonfiction. It has a lot of pictures that the author took, and with explanations, shows you how the locals live and the culture. I have never read any photography books for From and About Asia reading project, so I think this will be a great way to vividly see how the local lives and learn more about Mongolian culture. Following, I have a memoir called Hearing Birds Fly by Louisa Waugh. This is the author's record of her life living in a remote village in Mongolia. It's also where she came to terms with things like the hardness of climate and was able to have new connections with things like the treatment of animals, death, solitude, and the real feelings of loneliness. Hoping this book will provide some more deep understanding of the local culture, since the author actually lived in Mongolia for quite some time. Let's talk about some of my other personal readings. March 8th is the International Women's Day, so I have 3 books planned around it. 2 of them are very short, so I think it's super doable. But first of all, I want to read Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. This is a classic nonfiction about feminism and queer culture that I have always wanted to read, but I'm also very intimidated by it. But I think the time has come. This is a collection of 15 essays about sex, race, gender, and economic status. I heard it's empowering and illuminating. Then I have a small book in traditional Chinese called 阴道读语 by Eve Ensler. This is the traditional Chinese version of the classic play called The Vagina Monologues. The simplified Chinese version is called 阴道读白. I bought this book 10 years ago in Taiwan after I watched a Chinese adaptation of the play and really loved it. I have no idea why I haven't read this screenplay yet, but again, it's time. This is a play about, of course, vaginas, interviewing women about the feelings of their vaginas, the power, the shyness, the pain, the period comes with the vagina. It was such a powerful play. I think it's one of my enlightenments for feminism, to be honest. I still remember that day and the feeling that after I watched the play and how the wind was blowing around the theater that day, I miss the feeling so much. I think I'm just like very homesick now. Then I have a poetry collection that is even shorter. It's called You Said Feminist by Megan Beech. I picked up this book based on the recommendations of Jen from Bookish Thought, and she said it's like hanging out with an old friend who understands. Fashion is talking about how young feminist is dealing with mental illness. I feel like it's so fitting, and I'm so looking forward to read it. And after the feminist set, I have a book called Identity by Francis Fukuyama. This is a book that I just hauled in my last book haul video, and it's talking about identity and how that plays an important role in our current political environment, and also how identity is challenged because a narrowing form of recognition. I also have finished reading How to Lose a Country this month, and in that book there are some paragraphs or chapters about how identity are used by nationalism leaders, which is echoed in the premise of this book. So I'm really intrigued by it, and also I'm gonna buddy read this one with Nicole from Nicole is Here to Learn. I can't wait for our discussion. And then I have a returning books from my February TBR. I know, and as Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I have felt my classic reading of February, and I don't think there's any way that I can fix it without the moving and how things went wrong. We lost our apartment that we applied for. It's just a whole event. I did not have time to read another classic, but I'm putting it back to my March TBR as I'm still hoping to continue with my classic reading project this year. And hopefully I'll have more time to dedicate to reading a classic in March. And then the last 3 books are planned only for pure pleasure, and I hope they will calm me down in this chaotic time. And the first one is 异兽志 by Yan Ge. This is the Chinese copy of The Strange Beasts of China, which is very popular here on BookTube now, and it's set in a fictional town called Yong'an, where strange beasts are living alongside of humans, and our protagonist is set on a journey to discover the stories of those beasts, but everything soon turns into a mystery and a threat. I love a good mystery story, and they're always my comfort reading, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Also, I don't think I showed it in my book haul, but this copy came with some very weird, peculiar postcards that is very unique. Second to the last, I have a historical fiction. I think I featured in one of my TBRs last year, but I haven't read it, and it's The Mercies by Kiran Millwood Margrave. This is a story set in Norway in the 1600s. It's talking about in a village where all the men died from a tragic sailing event, so the village became a place that run and organized by women. But 3 years later, a sinister man and his wife came to the village and things started to happen. Some of you may know that I'm obsessed with Norway and I like historical fiction, so I have very high hope of this one. Last but not least, I have another mystery novel, and it's The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is a story talking about a group of elderly people who formed a detective club to discuss mystery every Thursday, but there happened to be a real case for them to solve. I'm a big fan of detective club settings, but normally I read about teenager detective clubs as it's one of the most classic settings in Japanese mystery, but I am very interested in an elderly detective club as well. I think this one is a very beloved murder mystery story, and the sequel actually came out already. I want to also read that, so I need to catch up with the first one. That's all the books I have on my March TBR. I know it's a lot, especially with all the booktube price that I need to read very closely, and also the moving coming up, so I'm sure I won't finish all of them, but I will try my best. Please let me know any of your thoughts about the books that I mentioned in this video, or what do you plan to read in March? And don't forget to say hi in the comment section down below. Thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I wish you happy reading, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!